Hi there. The similarities between this current coronavirus and the polio pandemic of the 1940s and 1950s are staggering, increased by those between the COVID-19 recovery syndrome and post-polio syndrome. And yet almost nothing is discussed about these and the neglect and ignorance of post-polio syndrome, affected by over 15 million polio survivors around the world. Surely some 70 years or so since
Grandpa,
the polio
look
virus
out.
struck
Shark.
children like me, and then for the last 40 years having to live with the symptoms of PPS, something would have been done to alleviate some of these symptoms. In many cases, making it so much easier for polio survivors to support themselves and their families. Even today, when we know that with careful and planned management, these symptoms can be relieved, nothing is being done to spread the word that this is the case, and support organisations such as ours to raise the awareness of PPS and the long-term management of the symptoms. Many foundations and international granting organisations are failing to see this impending problem and insist on only working to alleviate the polio virus, when for more than 20 million polio survivors around the world, polio is here to stay. It is also estimated that more than 50% of polio survivors are under 60 years of age, so polio is here to stay for many decades to come. This is not only a complete disaster, but this ignorance and neglect will lead to an enormous humanitarian catastrophe in only a few years into the future. Please support the work that we and other similar organisations are doing to raise the awareness of post-polio syndrome. Thank you for listening. The Worldwide Fellowship of Polio Warriors.
During this present pandemic, it is very easy to understand, and has actually been recognized as being very similar to the polio pandemic of 1940s and 1950s. Now that survivors of polio are most likely to be in our 70s and 80s, the worrying thoughts around this new virus can easily trigger thoughts of the experiences in hospital and the return home as children victims of the polio virus. Fearful of the spread of the contagious virus, cities closed pools, swimming holes, movie theaters, schools and churches, forcing priests to reach out to their congregations on local radio. Some motorists who had to stop for petrol would not fill up their deflated tires, afraid they'd bring home air containing the infectious virus. This was repeated across the nations. The virus was poliomyelitis, a highly contagious disease with symptoms including common flu-like symptoms such as sore throat, fever, tiredness, headache, a stiff neck and stomach ache. For a few though, polio affected the brain and spinal cord, which could lead meningitis and, for 1 out of 200, paralysis. For 2 to 10 of those suffering paralysis, the end result was death. With the polio virus, there were local lockdowns around the world. And then some 30 years ago, the symptoms of post-polio syndrome began to show its face. And again many of the symptoms of post-coronavirus actually replicate those suffered by polio survivors too. Some of the symptoms of PPS and COVID-19 recovery are fatigue, breathlessness, voice and swallowing, musculoskeletal, shoulder, and back pain. This all sounds very familiar.
Hello there. Let me give you one of my cards.